Over the past decade, the cult of Dark Souls has grown and gained army of loyal fans. Promise of the hardest challenges and the triumph through patience and improvement. Spectacular fights and sneaky ambushes. All this has formed the Souls-like subgenre, the formula of which many try to follow. This makes the process of discovering the sacred essence of Souls game design even more exciting. Many developers have already stepped on this path and not all of them managed to succeed. Today we will try to find From Software game design recipe through the eyes of the player. We will consider various disciplines of game design in search of unique features, and we'll see how different elements complement each other. We will talk a lot about strengths like combat system or level design, but also take a look on controversial game design elements such as camera behavior or narration techniques. So prepare yourself to find the souls of the lords within this flame. Obviously, it all started from Demon's Souls, the first project which was headed by Hidetaka Miyazaki, and we will definitely talk about it in following series. But now, we will attempt to find the mysterious attraction in grim world of Lordran, the firstborn of Dark Souls series, and beloved one by many fans. And we will start with its famous combat system, which has several game design layers. Uninterruptible animations, various movesets of weapons, iframe-based rolling mechanics, blocks, parries, and finally the stamina-based management of all these actions. These basic elements we see quite often in other projects that try to repeat the Dark Souls combat system. But all these mechanics are only part of the first layer of its game design. These will not work without that opposite part, the enemy behavior system. In addition to the obvious features such as variety of enemy models, hitboxes and movesets, two elements are critical for the core gameplay. First is clearly telegraphed opponent actions. Both trash mobs and bosses got animation that contains a preparation phase, by which an experienced player can determine the particular move and react in response. At the same time, it is important that the duration of this phase is sufficient but tight and provokes lightning-fast reaction and decision-making. Second element, it is balance of hit points and damage. Unlike many other games, in DS1 there is no need to hit mobs 100 times and even bosses can be defeated with dozen attacks. This creates the sense of consistency for the player, and vice versa. The ordinary mobs can kill you with a couple of hits, and the bosses can one-shot you easily. Add here the limitation of healing along with unforgiven death mechanic, and we get a system that offers player a high level of challenge, but also provides the necessary sense of victory accomplishment. But all these elements are on the surface of the first game design level, so let's dig deeper, because here combat system is even more complex. We got hidden mechanics with no in-game description that provides versatility to the combat. Poise stat followed by different weapon damage values, resistances to stagger and hyper poise attacks. These systems is completely new for a timing-based combat and can affect the playstyle dramatically. With Havel set equipped, you can simply tank damage and strike back without being interrupted or staggered. In PvP, for example, it is crucial stat for any playstyle. Another remarkable element is weapon reinforcement system and how it balances around character stats. Proper build grants player significant damage increase, while beforehand he can calculate exact numbers, only rough estimations, or he can Google of course. This unique feature of traditional RPG system gives player the choice value and induce experiments. Moreover, here we got resistances not only to magic elements, but also to certain types of melee damage. One boss can be easily slain by piercing attacks, whereas other vulnerable to slash damage. When player discover this small detail, he become more enthusiastic about depth of the combat system and immerse himself in gameplay even more. On top of that, most of the enemies use wide arsenal of abilities. They can shield, parry, counter and got hyper poise attacks. All of these systems are designed to provide a variety to combat scenes. During the first playthrough, player may not even be aware of all these features, so the purpose is to give him an incentive to discover all these mechanics in details. And even that is not all. Here we got more than 100 different weapons to choose from, distinguished by their appearance, hitboxes, movesets and weapon arts. 3 or even 4 if you count the Chaos Schools of Magic, with a few dozens of spells in each. Now it has become clear why DS1 still has a large active fan base, players again and again returning to the dangerous world of Lordran. But From Software managed to add additional dimension to combat scene. Opportunity for tactical positioning. Using landform and architectural features of level design, player can get advantage or avoid damage in tense battles. It's not just circular boss arenas, but carefully designed areas that generate positioning puzzles. This is another layer of combat system. Once again, it proves that it is very complex, so you can always expect to discover something new. No project of that time can provide such level of variability and challenge, where you need to master all these mechanics and get your skill improved to beat the game. Synergy of all this system leads to timing-based and risk management gameplay, and icing on this cake are the boss encounters. Boss fights are the hallmark of the Souls series, and for a good reason. Battles with fierce giants accompanied by the brilliant music themes and spectacular cutscenes. Let's try to find why these are so remarkable. First, it is the scale, the size of the boss itself, the arena where the action takes place, and the cutscenes represent an encounter. All this can be described by the word colossal or epic. All this should set the right scenery. The initial presentation scene as a prelude part to the show. Here you are the David against the mighty Goliath. And like the hero from Old Testament, player feels weak and vulnerable before terrifying giant. He knows that Goliath is stronger and faster. But we're not gonna give up so fast, right? At first it will feel nearly impossible, encounter is too difficult, you do not have enough damage vitality reaction, you cannot just read boss moves. So a moment of despair comes, followed by denial and anger. But then you try again and again, and you started to succeed, you feel progress, you know that it is possible, and finally the Goliath are defeated. Now you have enough dopamine in your blood to light up an entire city block. That is what we came for. Exactly to achieve this emotional state, so developers should design boss encounters accordingly. Mechanically, all bosses should provide different gameplay challenges. Their movesets and timing windows should vary, so it is literally impossible to beat one at first try. There may be a few phases of the battle with the new abilities, combat context, and maybe even some changes in arena. This feature creates a powerful emotional effect and works on the difference in comprehension between the state "it is just impossible" to "I am already getting it." I mean, it is not enough to make a difficult boss fight, it should seem almost impossible to beat from the very beginning, remaining fair enough in the meantime. On the flip side of this approach, it's almost impossible to balance all bosses with such combat system, taking into account different player skill levels. Some encounters are frankly easy to learn, while others can take hours and burn all your nerves. Each player can have their own boss difficulty ranking list, but there is a bright side. Sometimes, in this merciless world of Lordran, you become a hunter, not a victim. Entering into unequal battle, and due to the blessing of the Iron Jesus, you managed to win easily the first time. You didn't master the timings, you were just lucky and maybe a bit overpowered. This is not a mistake of the game designer, but an important element that was left intentionally. Rarely, but Berserker tactics should work, which makes it feel like you, yes, you cheated the game. This is unforgettable moments, because Dark Souls is never openly manifests delicate or generous attitude to player, the more valuable such victories are. This is a great trick on such good MMO projects are built. WoW, for example, that for decades ruined social lives of millions of players. It is hyper addictive, it allowing the player to get a sense of achieving something worthwhile in PvE, PvP, collecting, exploring, whatever. And Dark Souls is addictive because it has absorbed the best elements that could fit in single-player gameplay from MMO projects. You just need to beat any of Souls-likes once, and you will definitely return to the FromSoft projects. In a month or a year, it doesn't matter, but you will miss these emotions. You will starve the excitement of beating those giants. And the deeper player studies bosses and combat system, the more adaptable can be his playthrough, the more colorful experience can be. It is not enough to beat game once or twice to get all its features. There is always something else to try too, new types of weapons, armor, magic, roots. all this not only affects the damage numbers, but also significantly changes the gameplay. And here we can define the concept of Dark Souls' complex combat system. It is the one that provides dramatic changes in gameplay based on various player-defined inputs. It is player choices that affects the core gameplay. As an example, let's consider one unique feature in more details: the rings, which play a special role in entire Souls series. In an already variable system of character stats, weapons and builds, they bring the ability to respond gameplay situations accurately, adjusting character to withstand various threats. Rings are a kind of special tools that can be used only once during the entire playthrough, but this will simplify the process and will adapt you to almost any challenge. In addition, From Softwares are not afraid to destroy the canonical's approach of the RPG genre. We have long been taught that as the game progresses, we will get more powerful and deadly weapons, and the sword which we started with will be thrown away soon. But that is not the case in Dark Souls. At the very beginning of the game, player can find that one weapon and easily beat the credits with it. Conversely, weapon forged from a soul of one of the last bosses may turn into complete disappointment. Together, both of these factors, the ambiguity in definition exact power of weapon and the limitations of reinforcement system, create a favorable scenario for experimenting with weapons and builds, which is critical for replayability. But everything has its price. Yes, generally there are no balance around our character whatsoever. There are obviously strong builds, weapons, spells, armor sets and rings, but it doesn't really matter. Everything is opposed to the overall difficulty of the game. In any case, player has to find a way to beat enemies, clear location and learn the boss movesets, because no matter what weapon do you have, you need to survive first. Tank damage is mostly a bad idea. So survivability comes to the fore, because everything that surrounds you tends to kill you, and especially the level itself. And it is time to praise the legendary level design of Dark Souls. Many admires it at the top of perfection in industry. Interconnected system of levels provides a variety of paths in the most unexpected places, forming, let's call it, the web of the Lordran. An excellent technique used for creating verticality of the locations, with different levels of height and intervening possible paths. Creating such system is complicated also because of the camera and narrow field of vision angle, so you can't implement such design solution without risking of losing the ideal flow state. But this is where Dark Souls changes the rules of the game design and turns disadvantage into a virtue. You are immersed in these mazes, so you have to explore locations thoroughly, and this is a part of a core gameplay. FromSoft brought the navigational suffering to the absolute level of disgustingness, turning the confusion and frustration into a distinctive feature of their projects. But few notice that there are many tools that help player actually. I'm talking about the landmarks. Even in the most confusing areas, player can always catch a glimpse of an object, building or a surface that will help him to navigate, and this is their secret. You need to create complicated multi-level mazes, but at the same time you should give players spatial reference points. This is the rules of good taste. Also, here we can find numerous Metroidvania-like shortcuts that opens hidden passages as you progress through the game. Due to the complex architecture of the global map, player often doesn't expect such a connection between areas. Design goal of this is to give player an opportunity to skip the most tedious part of the gameplay, backtracking. We should take into account that players dies constantly, so you need to minimize it. Additionally, shortcut system got side effect making exploration more satisfying. In Dark Souls you are always face a crossroads. Not all of routes leads to a progress, but to some kind of reward or new experience. Sometimes it is nothing special, but often you will find a spell, a weapon or a ring, and these loot-based design solutions are canonical for encouraging exploring. The only criticism to level designers is the abundant use of narrow ledges and cornices, from which wear fell constantly. The idea is clear: to focus player and give him another degree of challenge, even when there are no enemy nearby. But struggle against those planks isn't really that exciting, especially with that jumping mechanic. Overall, these levels use a lot of architectural techniques, configurations of rooms, corridors and open spaces, and in any combat situation you gotta solve positioning puzzle as well as a combat one. Boss arenas also use this approach, so level design here is an integral part of the gameplay constantly. So technically level design is great, but from the artistic point of view it is far from perfect. Starting from blurred textures to the absolute stylistic incoherence of areas turns the world of Dark Souls into a patchwork. Backgrounds and decorations are mostly poor, their quality are inconsistent. Yes, there are few places with great views, but mostly because of great scales and vast spaces. Locations of Lordran are static, lifeless and shouldn't work, but the goal was to create a sense of lonely journey. Here, the color palette, along with the lighting processing and reflections, these only visual features that save the aesthetics and provide the atmosphere of despondency. They're just fit. As a result, we got level design aimed on exploration and combat, so player has no time to enjoy the beauty of this world. His eyes are divided to his character, to which design I would like to move. The appearance got many facets and details. I mean, yes, you can create an ugliest beast in the editor, but we will rarely see his or her face. Instead, we will see the armor, weapon and animations. Development team has devoted to 3D modeling and animation production a huge amount of resources because the player will see his character 99% of the time. So first, let's look at movement animations. Walking is smooth as possible while running is headlong, highly lifted elbows with large amplitude. This transition creates tension and accelerates gameplay pacing. Rolling mechanic got different animation and amount of invincibility frames depending on character burden. It gives player a realistic physics of weight and accurately transmits the effects of constraint. Combat animations have swing, strike and release phases in such balance that force player to carefully plan his attacks and gives the right feeling of impact force. In the meantime, when you hit a raised shield or a wall, there is a rebound animation which also provides clear feedback and works on a combat sense perfectly. Despite the limitations of uninterruptible actions, our character feels fast and mobile, and all his animations are eye-pleasant. With one exception, the feet bend when running on inclined surfaces is a bit cringy. In general, animations of the character and enemies are made at the top level, and I can't stress this more how critical this element for the entire gaming experience. But not only animations provide outstanding feeling. The scene enhanced by perfectly modeled game objects. Let's take a look on weapons and armor for instance. Models, textures, visual effects of weapon arts, all this looks brilliant. This attention to details aimed at players' materialism trait, since aesthetic features are significant for collecting trophies. Here, the light tracing and reflections from metal surfaces thrives. Player is pleased to admire his favorite weapon and the sunset rays of the new Londo. For its time, work with the light reflections in Dark Souls was fresh and innovative. A lot of efforts was also invested in the VFX development. As a result, we got spectacular visual effects, like elemental resin applied on a sword or unique weapon art, all this to provide player with an epic feeling in each strike. As we see on visual development processes, From Software team has neatly distributed available resources and focused efforts on elements that is really important for the core gameplay. Animations, models and movesets given much more time than decorating the world or to fashionable nowadays environmental storytelling. A great guidance to set priorities correctly. Don't try to cover everything in much details. Highlight the main elements and bring them to perfection, even if other features will get less attention. But what you should never skimp on is the sound design. In Dark Souls, this discipline has given a substantial objective to immerse player in world of Lordran. Sound effects are peculiar and memorable. You will never mix it up. This is the indicator of quality of creating new sound effects. These were taken to memes and become standalone piece of art. Only the voice acting is out of the concept. Frankly weak scripts, awful actor play and god, this laughter. I don't know why Miyazaki liked it so much, but okay, let's put it down to some sacred fantasies. It's just a bit creepy. Music accompanies gameplay and varies from epic themes of boss fights to melancholy melody of specific locations. These orchestral themes are implemented at the top level to create the necessary mood, because music is a great tool that excites emotions. But in most locations there are no music, even ambient is almost muted. The goal is to emphasize the atmosphere of loneliness in our journey. You're just another hollow one that flies like a moth to the fire of the first flame. Purpose of our character to ignite or extinguish that flame. That's it, that's pretty much the whole story. And even after complete playthrough, you have no idea what will happen with this world. And it is not particularly important, since it is only few people that you meet along the way, a couple of merchants, an idler onion and a sun bro. The lack of details in main storyline has also become a kind of distinctive feature of the Souls series. And let people say that we got deep lore in item descriptions, but it is static. All these events has already happened. Storylines tend to be evolving, dynamic. So I will put it this way, a good storyline has never spoiled any game. But again, this is just a fact. The S1 is loved for something else, not for a strong and interesting plot. Actually, lore is a great element of game design that can make world more attractive and immersive. Lore distribution through incomplete pieces force player to build his own reflections and make his own theories on the events of this world. Richness of facts and tales, the intervening of destinies and conflicts build strong base for research, which activates player imagination and makes them wonder about what events could actually happen there and how they are connected. From Software didn't invent this approach from scratch, but they once again show us how to define priorities and allocate resources. Besides, Miyazaki admitted himself that traditional script writing is their weak point. Any developer is limited in time, budget, people. You need to be able to apply what you have accordingly. And the lack of clear vision and limitations is our main enemy in development process. But for our players, the worst enemy in Dark Souls is the camera. This is one of the main issues that breaks consistency of gameplay. And situation can be even worse when you use lock-on mechanic. So in most cases, experienced players use lock-on mechanics only when it's vital. This issue with camera is rather fundamental in Souls series. In later projects there is a certain progress, well, except for Bloodborne, with beast enemies who constantly break your vision. But still, it is not possible to completely solve this problem. Perhaps you should take this as a payment for the combination of combat system and level design. But still, there is a glimmer of hope that one day we will face a solution. And maybe you guys got some ideas. And finally, the multiplayer. Controversial, unfair, with poor netcode and slow servers, but one of a kind. From Software implement completely new concept of cooperative and competitive gameplay. Yes, there are a lot of weak spots, but this new experience become a breath of fresh air for the community. Interaction with multiplayer functions harmoniously integrated in gameplay. There are no additional menus or game modes. It operates in-game through items, lore, level design. Conventional opponents become phantoms intruding our realm. Covenants besides unique item source become both the way of social standing and customization feature. And even the activation of multiplayer mode is elegantly implemented through the humanity consumable. Yes, it doesn't offer a real competitive multiplayer, MMR or any balance. It doesn't have matchmaking ratings or ranked leagues, but it adds a lot of fun to gameplay. Remarkable that community invented special etiquette rules for PvP skirmishes, showing the highest level of loyalty to the game. As an addition to the PvP system, Dark Souls provide player with gestures and warning signs. This is the only way to communicate in Lordran, since there is no global chat or anything alike. And I'm not completely sure whether developers were counting on this effect or not, but these features work even better for social collaboration than a traditional chat. After almost 10 years, multiplayer is still alive, players trying to help or trap each other, not only because it is fun and easy to use, but because they wanted to do it despite all of these limitations. Any flaws here? Sure, a lot, but this doesn't matter because it is a new way of in-game communication. Even in the darkest world of Lordran, there is a place of mutual assistance and unity. The darker the cave, the brighter the hope. Well, on this sentimental note, I would like to make a conclusion. I will not list the game design features that we discussed earlier, but I will try to define From Software's approach to the game design as a message to all of us. Do not be afraid to experiment, it is difficult, it doesn't always work, and trying more, you will succeed. Your project can become an icon for many years, and maybe you will be able to create new gaming experience that will be praised by loyal community. Like pain, suffering and despair, but players will return to Lordran for the next dose. Thus began the Age of Fire. Thank you guys very much for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, you know what to do. I'll see you soon, bye.